Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Harangi, Conference Manager for Washington State University Professional Education. Welcome back to Cougs Works, webinars for the workforce by Cougs. We are excited to be able to provide these sessions. This presentation will last between 20 and 30 minutes. I will be back after the presentation to ask questions you have posted in the YouTube chat feature. Tonight, our speaker is Jedidiah Collins. Jedidiah is a behavioral coach and founder of Rookie to Veteran. After being signed as an undrafted free agent in 2008, he played 7 seasons in the NFL while studying for the certification in financial planning in the off seasons. Today, Jedidiah's mission is to empower students, athletes, and professionals with the behaviors needed to eliminate the gap between the potential of their goals and the success that they desire. With that, I'm pleased to bring you Jedidiah.
Thank you, Alyssa, and good evening, everyone. First off, I want to commend you on this investment in yourself and the curiosity to continue to grow and learn through this. That topic of what we're going through right now is really what I wanted to address, and delivering both our physical and mental best self virtually. We're going to go through a concept that I love from our Rookie to Veteran sequence called Mow Your Grass. And where I learned this was so as we learned this, I started to look at no different than training camp. Our first question with the coronavirus, with training camp, with any kind of crisis is, when is it going to be over? And once you accept that idea that that is not in your control, your whole mindset and your whole perspective begins to change, and look at what are the controllables in these types of environments. A lot of people want me to point to Tom Brady, who's an amazing player, possibly the greatest of all time, how he has the ability to control the controllables in even the most stressful situations. I never got to play with Tom Brady. I never got to really be on the inside of that. A quarterback I did get to play with, his name was Derek Anderson, and he was Oregon State grad, played 15 years, may still be playing. But one thing he did while we were sitting in the locker room for the Browns really showed me what this mow your grass mindset was all about. Derek was being interviewed after a tough loss, and they began to bring up a question he no longer wanted to answer. It was an interception he threw in the game the week before, and he felt like he had already discussed it. So whenever a question came up to Derek that he didn't want to answer, he would respond by telling a story around his dog. So somebody would say, hey, Derek, what was the interception you threw in the third quarter? Was it a miscommunication, a miscalculation? What happened there? What didn't you see? He'd say, my dog Scout, we were out on a walk the other day, and I kept telling Scott, I said, don't go by that water. If you get by the water, you're going to get some ticks in your ear. And sure enough, when we got home, I had to burn 2 ticks out of Scout's ear. Next question. I sat in awe that, one, he had the audacity to respond like that, but 2, the principle he was really practicing was controlling what he could control. He didn't control the question. He did control his response. And while I do not recommend anyone respond to tough questions at work or with your professor or whoever with stories about your dog, we are going to dive into exactly what that looks like. As Alyssa said, my name is Jedidiah Collins. I consider myself a great failure. And in that, I want to discuss how I come to that mindset, and why that mindset helps me on a day-to-day basis is because failure is never ending for me. It is never a completion. It is the beginning. It is a learning process, and it is an ongoing trait. And that is something that I think we can take into everything that we do. As I got cut 12 times traveling through the National Football League, I continued to steal from guys like Derek, and I continued to look at how I could go from a rookie to becoming a veteran, how I can eliminate the potential of the dream that I was on. Today, Mow Your Grass is all around controlling the controllables, beginning to see what you can do. We were going to control our APE, A-P-E, your attitude, your preparation, and your efforts. So when you look at things that you cannot control, well, out on a football field, I can't control the opponent, I can't control the referee, and I can't control the weather. Some football coaches think they can control the weather, but that's just not likely. We started to focus on what did we can control. I controlled how I showed up. That's my attitude. I controlled what I had done before I showed up. That's my preparation. And I controlled how hard I went on every play, every day. That was my effort. If I could challenge you right now, because I want this to be engaging, and we're going to talk about why this is supposed to be engaging here in a moment. I want you to write down what is something currently in your life that is out of your control. I think we can all find an easy number one, but what are other items that you've been really honing in on, really letting distract you that are not in your control? What is something that you've really been obsessing over that you need to realize I don't control that output? Take a moment, write that down. Why this designation is so important is because Bill Walsh said it best. He said, stop staring at the scoreboard. The scoreboard takes care of itself. You don't control the scoreboard. What you do control are the inputs. You do control what you're about to do on this play. That output, whether that's a sales number, a grade on a test, or whatever measurement you want to do, that will take care of itself when you start to focus on controlling the controllables. So let's begin with attitude. I love this question because it really sets the tone. What if everyone on your team, in your group, in your project had your attitude? What do you think the demeanor would be like? What do you think the daily recognition would be like? If everyone, if Susie, if Stevie, if Sammy and Sally all had Jedidiah's attitude, would that be a positive? Or would that be starting to be something like a negative? As you look at this, you really got to see your attitude is the first thing you can control, and it's perhaps the most important. I learned this skill while playing basketball in the backyard with my brothers. My dad invented a game. It was called King for a Day, and we'd play one-on-one basketball. I was the baby brother of three, and I didn't win very often. We played in that backyard hundreds, thousands of times, one-on-one basketball, and I remember very vividly the 2 times I walked off that court as king for a day. Now, when you became king, you got to boss the other brothers around. Go take out the trash, go get me some water. My dad would even play into it and go cut stuff up on the yard, and the losers would have to go do that. And as I started to realize thousands of times playing, I wasn't going to win. So I needed to change my attitude from walking off as king to where was my win? How was I going to show up and think through this? Well, my mindset shifted from Jed's going to walk off a loser to Jed's going to walk off a little bit better. Each day that my brothers beat me, I got that much closer to beating them, or I got that much better at a skill. And eventually, I became the best athlete, not because of my natural abilities, but because my attitude was so sound in a game, in a practice, in the offseason, through an injury, through a crisis. Everything was through my attitude, my approach, how I showed up. And that was everything. As you look at that, you start to realize your attitude is not what's happening in the world. Everyone says life is stressful. Life is not stressful. Stress is your response. Stress is your attitude to what is happening in this outside world. No doubt right now we're going through a crisis. No doubt right now life is challenging. But as you look at your response to that situation, that begins to define your attitude. And that is an input, not an output. So as you see this, life, 10%, your response, your attitude, 90%. That is what you want to begin to control and see. Now, how do you start to do that? Everyone, we used to drive into work or go into school or wherever we were headed, and we would show up and maybe a friend, or maybe it wasn't such a friendly person. Maybe it was an email, text message. We would all allow something to dictate our attitude, that reactive response to the day. Well, this is where we stop doing that. That is an outcome allowing to drive our attitude. We today can start to look at inputs to how we're going to control our attitude. No longer do I show up and let an email dictate my attitude. Now I am going to start investing in myself and in my attitude as the day begins. So that is the challenge I want to lay out for you today. How are you going to reprogram yourself to having a proactive attitude to start your day, to start your meeting, to start your project, to start your session? What does that look like for you? Bill Gates is famous in saying he would go and do think weeks. He would go and read books for 5 days at a time, read scripture or read entries from his Microsoft employees. That was his moment to kind of dull the saw, to really rest, relax, refresh. He invested in himself and was able to come back refreshed, renewed, and with the right attitude. So take a moment right now. What is it that you will do to invest in yourself? Go off in the woods for a week? I don't know if we can all do that. Bill had a lot of people working for him. But the idea of maybe reading a book, maybe it's not that business book, maybe it's a fiction book, maybe it's an audio book, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's exercise, whatever that is for you. Take a moment and write down how you see an area and an opportunity to invest in yourself. One of my favorite and easiest ways to invest in me, I actually went and hung upside down for about 10 minutes before I jumped on here tonight. Why? Well, because I played football and I got a bad body. But also it allows me to focus. It allows me to clear my head, and you really have to breathe. A momentary investment in yourself, a deep breath, you can almost feel the calming sensation as that breath hits your brain. So looking at that, you really start to understand attitude can be controlled because it's an input, not an output. Now, as we go through these sequences, I also want to deliver around how you can deliver great virtual representations of yourself. You're going to control your attitude, your preparation, and your efforts. And how you can begin to do that, we're going to steal from the VAKR, the Vaker demographic of how people learn and how people interpret what you're doing and saying. The K is for kinesthetic, It is what you're willing to do. So this is, as you show up for this workshop, have you been writing things down? Have you been engaged? Have you really focused on controlling the hands-on and the engaging experience? That is everything right now. Can I show up with an attitude that says, this is going to be the next 25 minutes. I'm going to get everything I can out of it. I'm going to be engaged. I'm going to be involved. I am going to actually feel this workshop and this presentation. So that first one, and how you can deliver your best virtual self, is by being engaged. When somebody asks you to do something, do it. Whether they can see you or not, they will understand as you respond, as you ask questions, as you show involvement, you will be able to check that one off the box. And if you are the presenter or the deliverer, always try to build in exercises and sequences throughout your session. Attitude, preparation. The second one is going to be prepare, how you actually are getting ready for the day. Right now, we have all been forced to go home, be self-starters. I like to think everyone has become an entrepreneur overnight, and we really have to look at what the entrepreneur's first and hardest problem is what is the win today? How are we preparing our day to go and achieve what we need to achieve? Because there are always endless things that could be taking our focus. So as an athlete, when you get injured, you aren't able to recover overnight. You have a surgery, you break something, you have all these things. You have to look at, I have to prepare every day to progress, to find success. The win is when I get back out on the field, but I can't get that win today. So where are my success measurements? What am I going to be doing to continue to progress and get better? I look at this no different as preparing my morning or preparing to go to the grocery store. When you go prepare to go to the grocery store, you make a grocery list. Why? It's so you don't forget things. If you don't do that, you're going to be walking down the aisle and boom, forgot to get ketchup or jalapenos or don't know what else. Right now I'm thinking barbecue because it's summertime. But as you look at this list, you begin to see, what am I going to be intentional about preparing right now, today? I think we have two challenges here. Not only how are we going to prepare the day, but how are we going to prepare for this new normal or the new world we're entering? So let's look at the new world and the new normal. Ask yourself this question: what am I able to do right now that I was never going to be able to do before? We've all been just handed this gift. It's called the present. It's this moment right now. I see this moment, this time, as an opportunity to develop a skill that I would not have normally been able to do. Maybe that time I was stuck in traffic. Maybe that time I was stuck going from meeting to meeting. Maybe that time I was just out being a little bit more social than we are now. All of that time is being banked, and it is up to you to prepare that to go and transition into a skill for the rest of your world. So what are those skills? Perhaps one of those skills can be delivering virtual. Perhaps it's Excel documents. Perhaps it's social media. Perhaps it's Canva. Perhaps it's a million other things that you look at the new world, e-commerce. You look at all of those platforms, coding. What is a skill that you can start to develop, that you look at your career over the next 20 years and say, this was a time I got to prepare that I would have never been able to? I'm tired of students complaining about the scenario and the situation we're in. We have to challenge ourselves. That's one, the wrong attitude, and two, it's the wrong way to prepare. You have just been handed a gift that says you are on an even playing field with a 55-year-old who's been working their job for 20 years. They are in the same situation you are. That is an advantage. That is not a crisis for you. That is an opportunity. So if you can prepare this new world that nobody was prepared for, that nobody had any idea was coming, if you can use this time to prepare for it, you will be worlds ahead of that 55-year-old and that 22-year-old sitting next to you. So looking at that, what is a skill you can work on right now that you would have never been able to develop? Take a moment, write that one down. Bringing our intention a little bit back to the present. So that's preparing for a bigger picture. How do we prepare the day? Again, we are being forced to be self-starters. Personally, I'm still getting up at 5 a.m. I know you think I'm crazy. My wife thinks I'm crazy. My friends think I'm crazy because I'm apparently the only one still waking up at 5. But I have a reason. There is a method to my madness. I got 2 little girls. They wake up, they start running around. No longer is the house as quiet, calm, and still for my creative juices or my focus to really be intentional. So that is how I prepare my day. I get up early and I go through my S sequence. This is something I'd ask you to write down, because if you can do 1, 2, or all 5 of these, I guarantee your day will be prepared to be a success. The first one and the easiest one will change your life. And if I can get the world to do this, I think I will have made a great impact. The first S is sip. Get a glass of water. The moment you wake up, within 5 minutes, you should be pounding a cup of water. You've just been dehydrated for 8, 10, 6 hours, however long you were asleep. That is going to not only control your brain, it's going to control your skin, it's going to control your weight. Getting that first glass of water in your body, the beginning of the day, first action is 1, check off that you did something successful, and 2, really replenish yourself. The second S is going to be stillness. This is where you take as much time as you're willing, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 25 minutes, and you sit in some stillness. Why I wake up at 5? It's quiet and it's still. I get my 5 minutes to just sit and be quiet. That right there is a powerful tool. We go through buzz all day long, all day long. The moment the day starts, you don't stop hearing a buzz. So sitting in some stillness is really going to help. And if you want to take that breath again, if you want to meditate, if you want to breathe, or if you want to pray, whatever you want to do with those stillness moments. The third S is going to be what Elon Musk described as his secret to success. It's an interesting one, showering. Why? He said it refreshed him. It really helped prepare his body image, because a lot of cultures define who you are, how successful you are, by how you show up. So looking at that, you really have to see showering, doing your hair, shaving, all of that is going to be in the sequence. So third S is shower. The fourth S is going to be sweat. Doesn't have to be a 60-minute run, doesn't have to be a 45-minute Peloton. Whatever it is, just get a little sweat going. Move your body around. It could be 10 squats in the air. Boom, ba, 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 ba. Could be 10 push-ups. Whatever it is, in the morning, one of your first movements has to be getting that sweat going. Doesn't have to be dripping, but you got to get the body functioning and moving. The fifth and final S is the most important to me, because it really prepares you and it really plants seeds in your mind around what you're going to do today. It's called S, self-talk. Sip, still, shower, sweat, self-talk. This is going to be where you start to repeat something to yourself. It feels funny, feels kind of odd at first probably, but it is subconsciously telling your brain what intention you have for that day. You can have an overarching mission that you are after. Personally, my mission is to empower people to use money. I say that to myself. It's a much longer script, but I say that to myself every morning. Why? Because that is what I want to be thinking about, whether I'm thinking about it or not, all day long. So what is that words of affirmation for you? It can be that kind of idea where you are setting a tone, or it could be a positive affirmation, something you want to tell yourself to go do and become by saying it as it already is. There's a great book called Think and Grow Rich. That's where we steal these kinds of methodologies. Napoleon Hill was very clear and said, thoughts become things. You look at any great feat that has happened in the world today, Eiffel Tower, Amazon, a family, they all started as a thought. Thoughts become things, and you start to put those thoughts in your brain, and they manifest into a reality. So how are you going to start your day with self-talk? You can start with a mission statement, or you can start with a simple word of affirmation. That is something that says, I can, I will, I am proud of, I love when. Those positive thoughts. Take a moment, write down something, fill in those blanks. I can, fill it in. What can you do today? I will, what will you do today? I am, who are you today? I love when, what? Those words, those thoughts, those things, start to repeat them on a daily basis, and trust me, you'll be shocked at what manifests into reality. As we look at delivering a digital presentation, we're going to look at the A as auditory and the R as reading. So as you look at auditory, this is obviously what you're hearing. But what I want to be very specific about is the idea that what you are saying has a very little impact in what people hear. Communication, the context is a percentage, but a smaller percentage than you think of how people listen and understand you. Virtually, we have to really understand this practice of auditory learners and listeners. So what I want you to start to do in your communication is focus a little bit more, control a little bit more how you say things. There's tone, there's inflection, and there's cadence. In that order, you start to hear some of those things. That tone, are you very serious? Are you a little more jolly? Are you a little happier? That cadence, do you have a rhythm to what you are saying? Or inflection, are you going to make a point at certain times? Those are ways you can begin to communicate virtually. You don't need to feel me, you don't need to see me, but you can hear my rhythm, hear my passion. Oftentimes I struggle where I'm starting to present my money vehicle is because people don't hear my passion in an email. Auditory learners and listeners can hear you. And this is where you have to maybe use some music to remember, maybe use some music to make people more comfortable in listening. Maybe you can just begin a discussion amongst the group. Are you going to engage them, as we talked about before? Now, the reading part, this one's really interesting to me because everybody is starting to hate text. Why I chose not to do a PowerPoint is because I think most people want to just be talked to and feel like a conversation. I can do slides, I can do PowerPoints, and maybe I wasn't as prepared, or maybe I just chose not to, but that text imagery, there are many people who learn best through text. So what are you going to have them write down? What notes are you going to have them take? What list are you going to have them remember? Those are categories of ways people can remember. So if you're delivering, what is a quick list that you're going to recap and make sure everybody learned? The biggest one here, though, as people are reading or seeing, is what story are you telling through the text? You're going to be talking, you're going to see the visual. What is the connection and what is that story you are starting to tell? So the third and final one is going to be E for effort. Attitude, preparation, effort. Effort's an easy one. I love to describe effort as anything that takes zero talent. I know guys who truly made careers in the National Football League by being the biggest hustlers on the team. Nobody would beat their motor. They made plays, they ran down plays, they always showed up on film because they hustled. This idea to me was really made clear as I was actually competing with somebody for a team when I was early on. And I remember reporters swarmed around him. He was new to the team. And they started asking him, what are you going to do here? How are you going to fit into the offense? What are they saying about your competition? He threw his hands up and he said, listen, I'm here to mow my grass and give my best effort. And that's where I stole that from. Mow your grass and give your best effort. Everything he did, he was going to give his best effort. He also understood that his success was never going to be in my backyard or anyone else's backyard but his own. His controlling was going to go to his backyard and mowing his grass. So as you look at this, you start to realize, how can I give better effort? Maybe that's in a sale, I'm asking better questions. Maybe I'm reaching out and asking for a connection on LinkedIn. Maybe as a leader, I'm not only just setting a goal, but I'm really giving an effort and encouragement on what we're trying to accomplish today. Or am I just trying to add better value and build more relationships? Effort is anything that can be had or done with zero skill. That is something I want you to write down. Few examples: show up on time, bring some energy, ask good questions, create better body language, be coachable, and smile. Those are things that take zero effort and can make a difference as you look to mow your grass. Now, as you look at a virtual presentation, how you want to visually show effort. Well, this is going to be what people see you do. Are you showing on your body language effort? As we talked about communication, the context, what you actually say is very little of the communication. How you say it is more. The biggest form of communication exponentially now, because we are virtual and most of our workshops and presentations are just looking at a two-dimensional, is this idea of body language. Half of our communication can be seen in a smile, in a nod, in an eyes, in some kind of form of body language communicating. I can't tell you, as I look at workshops, seeing people and how they react is everything to me right now. That visual understanding and that visual buy-in. So write down one thing today, this moment, that takes zero talent. That is where you can focus and control your efforts. So I'm going to wrap up because I want to get to some questions and I want to be conscious of your time. I want to end with this little story because it's about inputs, not outputs. So if you throw a potato if you throw an egg or a potato into boiling water, you will have two different outputs. The potato is going to soften, the egg is going to harden. You don't control how they react. You don't control the output of what comes. What you do control is what you put into that water. Are you putting in an egg or are you putting in a potato? That idea, don't look at the scoreboard. Control the controllables. What are my inputs? Can't hit this sales number right now today. What I can do is make this many calls today. That's an input. That's my attitude. That's my preparation. That's my effort. So as you're looking at writing down, what is our walk away action item list? How are you going to invest in yourself? What is that 10 minutes a day? What is that hour a week? What are you going to go do to invest in you? Prepare. What is a way to sharpen your axe? This is a perfect opportunity to prepare yourself with a new skill for this new world. And then, how are you going to prepare the day? You own the morning, you own your day. 5 S's, maybe do one of them, maybe try to do all 5, but own the morning and set the intention and the preparation of finding success that day. Focusing on that self-talk. What is that word that you're going to tell yourself each and every morning? The last one, what was your example of something that takes 0 talent? That is where you're going to get your effort. That is where you're going to really win people over. I want to end with a quote by Sun Tzu from The Art of War. He said, amongst chaos, there is also opportunity. Amongst chaos, there is also opportunity. I really challenge you to find your opportunity right now. This virtual engagement, this delivery, how are you vocally? How are you, I have to look at my notes, auditorily? How are you kinesthetically? How are you reading? How are you connecting with people while you're listening or while you're delivering? Continue to develop those skills and you will be better suited. Really appreciate your time. Always go Cougs. And Alyssa, let's answer some questions.
Thank you, Jedidiah, for that valuable presentation. We are at our Q&A portion. I will work through the questions we received as time allows. If you have not yet asked questions in the YouTube chat, you may still do so. Jedidiah, one of our first questions we had submitted, it is more of a personal question, is has there ever been a point in your life when you were not sure what your goals were?
Oh, I don't know who asked that, but yesterday, truly. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a new entrepreneur. I just started my business in January 1st of 2020. Not the most ideal time to start a new business. I'm chasing a passion and I'm trying to figure it out. But absolutely, there are times where I get overwhelmed. I get lost. And the idea that you see people and maybe they're successful, maybe they're people like me, whoever they are, and you think, oh, they don't feel those emotions. My wife will be the first one to tell you those waves of insecurity, those waves of doubt, those waves of fear absolutely come crashing down on me. I'm a big journaler, so I would challenge you when those do come, write them down because you're going to want to turn around and look back and remember them. But yes, I feel lost at times, but that is why I write down my goals. I write down my intentions for a month, for a week, for the days, because that really brings you back. Something I carry with me most places are lists, and I have different, forms of writing and ways to do it. But if you can keep some kind of intention on what direction you want to go most overall, you can back into the strategy. And looking at that intention around this week, my strategy, my goal was to accomplish this thing. Well, then on Wednesday, when I get hit by that wave and I go and I take my 10 minutes to myself, I come back and I look at what the intention was and I get to go back to work. But it's having that stuff written down that really is the reminder for me. And that book, Think and Grow Rich, has done a really amazing job of allowing me to define what my mission is, because that means I'm not falling off track as often. A great question. And absolutely. And yes, yesterday I had a weird moment.
Thank you for that. So before our official presentation, we had the chance to chat a little bit about your time in the NFL. Could you tell us how you pivoted from a football player to an entrepreneur, and what do those two career paths have in common?
So it's interesting. I think athletes and entrepreneurs have a tremendous amount in common. They have to, number one, be able to control their time. They have to be experts at time management, because there's always a new shiny toy, always a distraction, always something that is going to take you away from the direction you're currently headed. And so that has been one of the biggest skills I've had to develop as an entrepreneur. And I go back to how I would do it as an athlete. I do time blocking. This is the time I'm going to work on this. This is the time I'm going to meet with that person. This is how my days are going to be structured. No different than an athlete going to work out, going to a meeting, and going to practice. My transition was unique in the idea that I kind of knew where I was going to head after football. It began by being kind of disappointed in myself, not having any idea about money. And then it was truly, kind of lit a fire around, as I asked more people, nobody knew what to do with money. And so where my focus really started to shift was that financial space, that financial world. As my education and knowledge grew, I loved answering more and more questions for people. And so I knew I wanted to go into that realm. I went and worked at a great Cougar-owned company, Bright & Jones, with my mentor, Brett Carolyn, and thinking I wanted to be Brett. I think Brett has a tremendous job. I think the career of financial advisor is wonderful. But my focus was really, and my passion was not necessarily wealthy people, but in helping people start their journeys and answering the questions and the twists and the turns at the beginning. And so to do that, I had to go branch out and begin Money Vehicle and begin my business that I'm doing today. But I will be the first one to say, if you're like, well, I don't know, I don't have a higher purpose, or I don't have a calling, or I don't know that voice, go do something. And then whatever you start to look at your week and say, oh, Wednesday, I get to go do that. Thursday, I get to do this. That is going to start defining what you want to do. And then it's your job to find a career, a job, or a responsibility that highlights and allows you to do that more and more. That being said, one of the best quotes I heard a year or two ago from a very successful entrepreneur, twice a unicorn, creating billion-dollar businesses. He said, hey, as an entrepreneur, take whatever you love doing and accept that you're not going to be able to do that all the time. That is the curse of the entrepreneur. As you scale, as you grow, as you find success, that passion gets taken away from you a little bit, because you don't get to, for me, it's delivering workshops. I love being in front of people. I'm learning to adapt and do it virtually, but ideally I would be standing in front of you all. As my business grows, as things happen, maybe I'm not going to get to do this as often as I would like. So the idea of finding your purpose is through doing. Go try, and figure it out. And as you look at your week, find what excites you.
Thank you. So you mentioned you're transitioning and finding your journey. I think a lot of people during this time are finding new journeys in life and trying to figure out how to adapt. So you mentioned your kids and changing routine, as well as we all are settling into working from home for the long haul, it seems like. How do you prioritize work with the S sequence and other positive habits with all of these increased distractions?
So it's a daily challenge. I continue to set my intention of the day. What is my job number one? What am I going to be focused on in doing? And really seeing, how am I going to measure it out? So, personally, I have two little girls, and I have to balance trying to grow a business through a crisis, as well as trying to be a father and trying to be a husband. So it's all a balance. And do I get it right? No. Like I said, there are days where I get lost. There are days I'm overwhelmed. But it's really coming back to my list, coming back to What do I want to do most? That has to be my mission. That has to be the direction I'm headed. And then from a strategy perspective, I know on a monthly time frame what I should be working on. I know on a weekly time frame what my job number one should be. And so that is really going to help you kind of continue to be productive and be positive, is having that mission that says, this is the person I most want to be. Here are the major steps and stones of how to get there. And then on a week to week or even a day-to-day basis, what is that focus of an intention of the moment? And that's really been helping me kind of get through and build in all of these things. So I would say laying out that strategy, and those are actually other principles of the rookie to veteran sequence around defining your most and building out the chess strategy. So hopefully maybe one day I can come back and deliver more on those.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is more around, you're presenting now virtually, and this is something that you're not used to as an audience, we're not used to. And I think we're all becoming more familiar with new Zoom verbiage, such as Zoom fatigue or online fatigue. So we all have it, but we all still have to communicate with each other over some sort of virtual platform. How can we improve what we are doing for better reception from our audiences who are experiencing Zoom fatigue probably on a daily basis?
I would say number one, don't forget the phone. So many people now are just like, well, let's set up a Zoom. I like jumping on a phone call and walking around, my neighborhood or my backyard. I think a lot of people have forgotten that the phone works just as good. You can still have a conversation and still do it. So Zoom is great, but it is not the only format. And oftentimes, we need to remember to just dial the phone and pick it up that way. I would work, in one of the skills I've, typically if we had a little more ability to engage throughout this, I would stop and have discussions. That to me is where you get engagement. I don't care if it's me or Bill Gates, 45 minutes of one person talking gets tiring. And so I really start my workshops with a question. I want people to feel like they are as much a part of this as possible. And so I feel like if we are not having meetings where questions are being asked both ways, I get some superiors don't have any interest in this, but the idea that if you are delivering, even if it's a project, you need to ask and find spots in the presentation to ask questions and build in the time to warrant answers. This typically would be an hour-long workshop. We didn't have time to build in the engagement, so it went to 30 minutes. And so if I could do it differently, it would be have 5 minutes. Did you write that down? Let's talk about it. What'd you write down? What'd you think about that? How'd you do this? And that is how you build a community in a virtual presence, is I have to be more intentional about asking questions. I cannot let 5 minutes go by and it just be me talking. I need to have you involved, engaged in doing something.
Absolutely, that's extremely important. So last question is going to bring you back to your college roots. How have your connections at WSU been important in your career?
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to say, number one, I got my first job from Brett Carolyn, a Cougar football player, at a Cougar-owned business at Brighton Jones. I'm a member of the Cougs First Network. If you are a graduate, I would highly recommend looking into what Cougs First is. Also, the Cougar Alumni Association. This idea that Washington State has a proud alumni base cannot be understated. It is one where we want to help each other find success. I tell people all the time who see I'm a very passionate Coug. I have, little memorabilia and things like that all over the place. And people say, Jed, why are you so passionate about being a Cougar? Because if I don't believe in us, if I don't support us, who will? We're not Notre Dame. We're not USC. We don't get stragglers. People who support Washington State, support Cougs, are 92% actual Cougars. And so this is an intention that I tell student athletes, I tell every student, your scholarship or your tuition, I would say 50% of its value has nothing to do with what you're learning. It has everything to do with who you're meeting. That is a major aspect you need to take control over. So that is something that you should look around and say, who in my major, who in my classes should I try? Should I reach out? Should I connect with? And it doesn't have to become a best friend, but it has to be something that professionally you are comfortable around. And how you do that, again, asking questions. You go and create that community by showing curiosity and interest in other people. So your Cougar community, myself included, I would hope all of you connect with me on LinkedIn. If you aren't on LinkedIn, go get on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. This week, I've connected 3 different young Cougar graduates, one of them actually still on campus, with former Cougs. That's what Cougs First, that's what the Cougar Nation wants to do. I get no better enjoyment than when I say this 24-year-old needs to meet this 44-year-old, if for no other reason than they can give them some advice in whatever profession that they're looking at. And believe me, whatever thing you want to do, there's a Coug in that industry or in that specific job. So I think it's big part of our failure and opportunity to continue to unify as a university, our alumni base, and how we're going to help each other get positioned into the right careers and the right jobs, especially with what is happening right now. We're being challenged to what is the higher education value add? That question, that idea is everything going forward. So I challenge student athletes to say, hey, you just lost your season. What are you going to do with this time? No better time to start reaching out and building that network. And I tell, students, again, this is not a crisis for you. This is an opportunity. Start to build your network, start to look at whether it's social media or actual reach outs, start getting those things rolling, because that is going to be the value add at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Thank you for leaving us with that. That was our last question for the night. And wow, what a great question to end that on. Jedidiah, I want to thank you again for your time and all that great information you provided us this evening. Everyone, to learn more about upcoming CougWorks webinars, please visit profed.wsu.edu/CougsWorks. And for more information about degrees in this field, visit choose.wsu.edu. Thank you all and have a great night.